Anne Teresa Auguste Hopkin, OBE, of Riversally, St. Mark, who resided at Coral Cove, Lansopine, St. George, passed away on Sunday 15th January 2023 at the age of 85, left to mourn siblings Myrtle Joseph in England, O'Neill Auguste and wife Maudlin in New York, Fabrina Auguste Lewis in Trinidad, and Mark Prince in Grenada. Nieces and nephews including Dr. Sharon Auguste McBain, Cheryl Robinson, Shirlene and Karen Auguste, Kim Agyamang, Deborah, Simon and Jacqueline in the USA, Angie and Shirley in England, Norma in Trinidad, Leonard Auguste, Osbert Charles, Judy and Old, Sherry and Old Mark, Arnold Auguste and Oswald Belfon and Rita in Grenada. Adopted daughter Grace Williams. Brothers and sisters-in-law including Bernadette Lyons. Grand aunt of many. Other relatives and friends, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Marietta Mitchell, Claudia Simon and family, Agatha Clark and family, Magdalene Herry, Morris Simpson, Dr. Clarice Modeste and Dr. Julie Dubois, George Phillip and family, Joyce Whiteman, Othma Leach, Sister Sherry, Shireen, Kizzy and family, Helen Williams and family, the pastor and members of the Maranatha Seventh-day Adventist Church, members of the Nursing Fraternity, Caring Hands Nursing and Home Care Agency, Nurse Batson and staff of Innovative Healthcare Services, South St. George Welfare Association, the Kidney Foundation, the Sickle Cell Association, the Grenada Council for the Disabled, Friends of the Mentally Ill, the Grenada Cancer Society, the Auguste families of St. Patrick, St. Mark, and in Trinidad, the Hopkin family, the faculty of the St. George's University, and the friends and neighbors of Victoria and Lansopine. The funeral of the late Anne Teresa Auguste Hopkin, OBE, of Riversally, St. Mark, who resided at Coral Cove, Lansopine, St. George, will take place on Wednesday, February 8th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grenada Trade Center, with viewing beginning at 11 a.m. Entombment will be held on Thursday, 9th February at the Coast Guard Cemetery at 10 a.m. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Joseph Gregory Jones Frank, of New Hampshire, St. George, a well-known carpenter and musician, passed away on Thursday, 17th November 2022 in New York at the age of 73. He was the father of Winston in Grenada, Angela, also known as Louise, Suzanne, Teddy, Dwayne, Jamie, and Jody in the USA. Grandfather of 4. Great-grandfather of 2. His partner, Vilma McPhee. Many cousins, other relatives and friends in Grenada and abroad, including Joan, Shirlene, Norman, Christina, Maureen and Kafted, Auntie Tina, Edith Phillip and family, the Batiste, Dragon, Edwards, Frank, Benjamin, McPhee and Frederick families, and friends and neighbors of New Hampshire and in the USA. A memorial service for the late Joseph Gregory Jones Frank of New Hampshire, St. George, will take place on Thursday, 9th February in Grenada. Service will be held privately. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Desmond Abraham Williams, also known as Brother Pampy, of Constantine, who resided at Boca St. George, former employee of Gravel and Concrete Production, passed away on Tuesday, 17th January 2023, at the age of 66. He was the husband of Jenny Smith Williams, also known as Auntie Jenny, father of Anderson Smith and Tarina Williams Belfon, father-in-law of Siobhan Belfon, brother of Jacob, Sherma, Sylvester, Raymond, also known as Pound, Lisita, Norris, Rose, Lydia, and Lyd, brother-in-law of Oslin, Jerry, Cletus, Nicholas, Hazel-Ann, Edith, Brandy, Leroy, and Augustine, uncle of many including Willana, Imrod, Denson, Nathaniel, Dion, and Raymond, godfather of many including Nicholson. Many other relatives and friends including Pastor Arthur Blackett, Pastor Alan Jones and members of the Boca New Testament Church of God, Mr. and Mrs. Alexander Smith, Nishon Best, Mr. and Mrs. Ian Bain, Mr. and Mrs. Andy Lewis, Keith Moore, Babsy, Vanessa Hood and family, Evangelist Abraham Regis, Ethlyn Belfon and family, the Williams and Mills families of New Hampshire, the Smith family, and friends and neighbors of Constantine, Boca, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Desmond Abraham Williams, also known as Brother Pampy, of Constantine, who resided at Boca St. George, will take place on Thursday, February 9th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Boca New Testament Church of God, and interment will be at the Family Cemetery, Sanco. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Wilton Anthony Allard, also known as Titchy, Titi, or Uncle Lion of Lassages St. David, died on Thursday, 19th January 2023, at the age of 34. Left to mourn his parents Wilton and Joan Allard, brothers Antonio Allard, Patrick George, Cody and Corey, sisters Catherine, Natalie, Lorna, Yvonne, Avon, Kimmy, Kimberly, Sheena, and many others too numerous to mention. Aunts Diane, Alma, Paula, Berlinan, Priska, Barbara, Magdalene, Gloria, Bev, and Tylee. Uncles Wayne Carlton, Willan Regis, Raymond Isaac, Ray Ray, Fitzroy, Elton, Alistair, Kenneth, Ronnie, and Charles. Niece Candace Allard. Nephew DeAndre Clarkson. Sister-in-law Deandra Allard. Many close friends and family, including Pastor Patrick Nelson and family, and members of the Lassages Deliverance Church, the elder and members of the Brethren Assemblies of Order Temple, Pastor David King and family, the Clarkson and St. Bernard families of St. Paul's, the management and team members of Sandals Resorts, the Allard and Mahone families of Corinth, Croshoe, Grenville, and Pearls, the Toussaint family of Montrose, the Lewis family of Padmatar, Pastor Edwin Abraham and members of Rima, and the bodybuilding and fitness communities of Grenada. The funeral of the late Wilton Anthony Allard, also known as Titchy, Titi, or Uncle Lion, of Lassages St. David, will take place on Thursday, February 9th at 12 noon. Funeral service will be held at the Corinth Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entombment will be at the Corinth Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. George Freddie MacDonald of La Femme Pedmotar St. David passed away on Thursday, 19th January 2023, at the age of 83. He was the brother of Rachel MacDonald, father of John, Thaline, also known as Barbara, Neil, Laureen, and Oscar, grandfather of 26 including Tesha, Avril, Chase, Dahlia, Srideth, Jason Andel, and Rhea Braffett, great-grandfather of 8, father-in-law of Anson Edwards, Dexter Duncan, Wiltris MacDonald, Marlon Thomas, and Anderson John, uncle of Glenn, Julian Mercury residing in England, Dane and Pinky, and Glenda Lovedale residing in Norway. Other relatives and friends including the MacDonald family of Woburn, Woodlands, and Mongeloo, the Bowen family of Beaton, Mongeloo, and Lauraland, including Loxie Bowen of Mount Edgemont, the MacDonald and James families in England, the Maitland family of Belmont, and friends and neighbours of La Femme and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late George Freddie MacDonald of La Femme Pedmotar St. David will take place on Thursday, February 9th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Garden of Prayer, St. Paul's, and interment will be at the Mount Airy Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Vernell Nixon, also known as V or Mary, of Beaulieu St. George, passed away on January 19th, 2023, at the age of 42, left to mourn her mother Dora Nixon, sisters Claudette Skeet and Paula Nixon residing in the USA, brothers Scully Nixon residing in the US, and Barry Nixon, sister-in-law Sally Ann Nixon, brother-in-law David Skeet, many nieces and nephews, Kurt and Crystal Skeet, Michelle Brown, Latoya Holes, Kalisa, Amy, Heidi, Barry Jr., Ethan, and Leslie Nixon. Niece-in-law Samantha Skeet, grand-aunt of 9, Brandon, Leah, Kai, Anthony, Jonathan, Chase, Alyssa, Nathan, and Elijah. Aunts Muriel Cador and Edris Nixon. Cousins Wilma, Rupert, Paul, Javon and Rhea Nixon, Wilby and Dana Hagley, Hillary, Harold and Sharon Hagley, Deborah and Martin Felix, Don, Raphael and Dr. Sonia Nixon, David and Margaret Abraham, June Sylvester, Mariam, Pat and the Cador family of Lamode. Other relatives including the Flavini family of Beaulieu and Boca, the Frederick family of New Hampshire, the Sandy family of Happy Hill, the Dragon family, the Sylvester family of New Hampshire, and the Nixon family of Lamode and Mountgay. Close and dear friends and neighbours of Beaulieu, Vendham and Willis, including Sherry and Thomas, Stacia Aberdeen, Shirley Pear, Mr. Morris, Vero James and family, Hazel and Hagley of Woodlands, and the Telesford family of Boca, the pastor and members of the New Hampshire Methodist Church. The funeral service for the late Vernell Nixon, also known as V or Mary, of Beaulieu St. George, will take place on Friday, February 10th at 2 p.m. at the Constantine Methodist Church. Tributes and meditation will begin at 1 p.m. and interment will be at the Family Cemetery, New Hampshire. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Olive Wilson, also known as Ma Olive of Windsor Forest, St. David, passed away on Saturday, 4th February 2023, at the age of 90. The funeral arrangements for the late Olive Wilson, also known as Ma Olive of Windsor Forest, St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Alva Houston, also known as Alpha, of St. Dominic Street, Grove, St. John, passed away on Thursday, 2nd February 2023, at the age of 64. The funeral arrangements for the late Alva Houston, also known as Alpha, of St. Dominic Street, Grove, St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Deslin Mary Wilson Pascal, also known as Passo, of Lamode, who resided at Springs St. George, a well-known employee of Springs Food Mart, died on Monday, January 30th, 2023, at the age of 53. The funeral arrangements for the late Deslin Mary Wilson Pascal, also known as Passo, of Lamode, who resided at Springs St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Margaret Blackman, also known as Della of Marion St. George and Lassager St. David, who resided at Woburn St. George, passed away on Sunday 29th January 2023 at the age of 60. The funeral arrangements for the late Margaret Blackman of Marion St. George and Lassager St. David, who resided at Woburn St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Rita Primus, also known as Julie of Victoria St. Mark, who resided at Marley St. Patrick, died on Thursday, 26th January 2023, at the age of 88. The funeral arrangements for the late Rita Primus, also known as Julie, of Victoria St. Mark, who resided at Marley St. Patrick, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
I am Godwill James, an MD and a member of Gateway Assembly. Medically, death is regarded as an end or a cessation of life. Different groups view death in different perspectives. While some regard death as a continuation of life, others view it as an infeeble form of life. As a Christian, we may want to view death as a separation of the soul from the body. So, whichever way one may view death, I want to say that may the gentle soul of the faithful departed rest in the bosom of the Lord. Amen.